For 14 months, I tracked two numbers in the business: money in, money out. Didn't look at Instagram analytics, LinkedIn analytics, YouTube analytics. And before you think this is some video of saying, just do what you want. No, it's none of that. I actually had 54,000 in revenue waiting. And I said no. And that's not because the numbers didn't matter. I could use the money, but it's because the metrics shouldn't get to dictate the life. I was selling, I was writing, I was doing all the sort of stuff, but I was basically building, and that 54,000 represented the exact thing that I had just tried to escape, which was an agency I had built for 9 years. So depending who you are, if you haven't clicked off by now, ignoring a lot of the numbers is going to either sound incredibly stupid to you or incredibly freeing. See which one you are. So I left this agency that we got to like multi-seven figures after 9 years of building that in August of 2024. And then for 4 months, I made nothing, right? But come January 2nd, I have a working offer. Somebody signs with me and I'm helping marketing agency owners scale, right? And then somebody else signs with me and then somebody else signs with me. And long story short, by basically February, with the 54,000 waiting for me to have availability to say yes to, I was more or less going to earn the salary that took me all year, take-home salary, and took me 9 years to get to in the agency. I was going to earn that by essentially May, should I have said yes to all 54K of that. But I said no. And the reason for that is I could see the writing on the wall. It's one of these things where I say, build the tree, make it impressive, all that kind of stuff. But the fruit would have tasted off because I was quite literally building the exact same thing that I had just decided was no longer for me at the agency. But it was incredibly difficult to say no to that money because the offer was good and everyone around me was screaming like, this is great, keep doing this. And I still said no because it was going to basically build the agency all over again, except this time I would have to do it alone. So I wasn't scared of the 54,000. I was scared of what the next 540,000 would represent, which is basically just building this life I was trying to escape. But this video is not about ignoring the numbers. Numbers are really freaking important. And if you ignore the numbers just because life's not that great, that is called avoidance. That's not called intent, right? So the purpose of this video is not designed to help you ignore reality. It is to identify that the numbers do not have to be the final say in the life you build. So here's a business phrase everybody knows, right? What gets measured gets managed and then scaled, yeah? Which is really freaking smart. But what happens when you are scaling the numbers for something that is not building the life you actually want? This is how capable people get trapped all the time, right? They create the offer sells. Then they create really good marketing for the offer sells more. They get more clients. They get more hires. They get more expenses. They get more responsibility. Everything is going up. The graphs are going up and to the right. They are building that impressive tree that everyone could say like, holy shit, look at your success. Meanwhile, internally, their life is getting smaller and smaller. Their day-to-day gets full of a bunch of things that they said yes to in the beginning because they needed to make the money, and now they're making the money, and the numbers are just giving their permission to keep ignoring that this feels like shit. And so the most important thing is we need to understand the function of numbers. The numbers can tell you what is growing. They don't get to tell you if what you're growing is worth the life. So if you know you're building the right thing, metrics can just be a really good illustration of making your life better. But if you don't know you're growing the right thing, metrics just become this pile of dirt on top of you, making it less and less escapable or able to be altered to actually live the life you want. So you might be asking, okay, I definitely feel that. My numbers are impressive and I'm not living the life I want. What the fuck do I do? And the first one is we need to identify, like, let's not ignore the evidence, okay? So here's the deal. You're living in evidence right now that is solely based on numbers. You go to the dashboard, you go to the graph, you look at the metrics, all that good stuff. Do those things, absolutely. But then there's evidence you're ignoring. And I would argue, this is why I didn't look at anything for 14 months, because it was the most important metric I cared about was, what does my gut tell me? What feels right? What feels wrong? Like I said, I burned out before, right? When you realize that the most important asset of the business is your energy and your focus combined to create your output, you need to protect that like nobody's freaking business. And so the evidence I was paying attention to more than the numbers, more than, what LinkedIn analytics could tell me, is how does this feel? And that is why when I had 54,000 waiting for me, I said no, right? It was mid-March when I said, I can see the writing on the wall. I'm building the exact same thing I just decided to leave. And my wife and I had planned to go to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, go to a cabin at the top of a mountain, no cell service, no Wi-Fi, none of that sort of stuff. And that was slated in May. And so I just stopped selling the offer and served the people who had already said yes to me, told the 54,000, I'm no longer selling this, and didn't add any revenue from mid-March until basically June. And it was because I was paying attention to the evidence of saying, okay, what rooms do I enjoy myself in? Where am I most valuable? What are the things I would do for free? What are the areas where it's like, man, I really don't want to take this into year 2 of my business, as an example, all that sort of stuff. And just asking those quality questions. That was the evidence I was after, because their numbers are unemotional. But the thing that keeps you going is the desire to keep going. And so numbers are never going to reveal that to you. It's more about how you feel internally. And so that's where those questions came from, in terms of, I can't ignore the evidence of, this doesn't feel right when I'm in this room. This is too deliverable heavy for me. The personality that this offer attracts, great person, not somebody I want to spend years and years with, right? All of these things factored in. And so how this manifested, if you want to look outwards at what I was doing, I was asking these questions over and over again of myself. And then a couple months later, it would result in a different offer or a different container or a different, like, very specific profile of person I was attracting, right? And so I iterated a ton in 2025, iterate. And from the outside in, you could look at that and be like, this dude has no clue what he's doing. Like, he is pivoting a lot. But I wasn't optimizing for numbers. I could have grown the thing to probably like 4 or 5x based on projections, what I earned at the agency in my first year of business. I wasn't optimizing for numbers. I was optimizing for conviction. Like I said, is this the thing I want to keep doing? Does this give me an elite day to day? Would I do this for free because I believe in it so much? That's what conviction is. Conviction is trusting yourself with absolute belief that you're doing the right thing, with faith that investing in that thing is going to give you the life you want. Numbers don't have trust. They don't have faith. They don't have belief. They don't look internally. They just are. And so what was most important to me were basically the words coming out of my mouth and the people I was helping. So for instance, if I published a piece of content, did I feel like I needed to say it, whether it got 1 view or 1 million views? That was the evidence I needed first. That's what I needed to optimize for first. Because once I had the work and the voice and the belief and the conviction in what I was doing first, then I knew the numbers that I would create after that would support the life I wanted to build. And so speaking of evidence, I was constantly, I have this thing called an after action report. After every conversation I have with a client, throw it into GPT, use the transcript and summary and all that sort of stuff. And was basically just reflecting. It's one of the most powerful skills you can have. Can you reflect on what you're doing? Because that is evidence. That's information, right? Why do you read books? They're giving you a story of what happened in the past, right? And so using that in my daily life and thinking, okay, how did that feel? Did that give me more energy, equal amount, or less after it was done? What was clearly lighting up my clients? And over time, it became clear that my deliverable heavy offer was not where they were getting the most value. Where they were getting the most value from me by a mile, which of course ended up being the thing I would do for free anyway, because I freaking love it, is a private room, one-on-one conversation, no agenda, right? With my clients now and the offer I have now, which took me time, those 14 months to get to. I don't say, I have a curriculum. I say, you're the curriculum. I can't give you my elite day to day. Let's go find your elite day to day, as an example, right? And it was so obvious that what I had created at the beginning, that was creating another agency, while it worked and was paying for me to live the life and to help people, and people got results and made more money, and that's amazing. What it wasn't doing was getting the biggest results, right? To where I finally went into, where are people getting the most value? It's just in conversation. They're hearing my read, my deep listening, my reframes, all that kind of stuff. And then taking that information, because they are a top level operator, using their own filter and doing amazing shit with it. If I was optimizing for numbers, I would have never been able to discover this, or it would have taken me a lot longer to discover this. Now, 14 months when you're in it feels long as hell. 14 months on the grand scheme of I'm building my body of work is like a freaking blink. And so to be able to go from, I'm starting here, not really sure what I'm trying to do, but just be as useful as possible, went with deliverables, what I know with the agency, to now my offer is literally no deliverables, right? Except the space I create for clients so that they can trust themselves again. Because my job is not to give them the answer. If I give them the answer, I own the reward. When they have the skills to find their own answer, right? To trust themselves with full conviction, to go out into the world and accept the big challenges and take those on and be decisive about those challenges. That's like when my kid comes to me asking me for an answer to his homework, and I'm not going to give him the answer, because the higher level skill is empowering him to go find the answer for himself, to have critical thinking, to create his own evidence, right? And so that is what ignoring the metrics taught me, is that if I would have been just, oh, no, we got to get this LinkedIn post further. Nope, we got to get this YouTube retention time up. Nope, we got to grow this top line revenue. We got to invest more in ads, blah, 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 blah. And I didn't have conviction in what I was saying. And I wasn't paying attention and reflecting on the rooms I was in, where the majority of my value was. I would still not have arrived at what I have now, right? The thing I would do for free that I'm absolutely privileged to get paid for. And yeah, it sucks. It takes a lot of time to actually get to that level. But that is why numbers without actual conviction behind it cannot be the loudest voice. And what's the downside of if I would have ignored that, right? Really what we're talking about is what you choose to accept and ignore. If you ignore the fact that you're not asking those questions, where do I feel most lit up by? Where do I gain energy? Where am I clearly delivering the most value? What is the thing I would do for free? Whatever question you want to have, if you're not asking those questions and you're more thinking of how do I get these numbers to go up, and you know that you don't actually like those numbers going up, and I'll have a question for you at the end of this video. If you're still with me, you're accelerating a life, let's say, that you don't want, right? All to have an impressive tree whose fruit, literally the fruit of your labors, you don't want to take a bite of because it tastes off. But here's the cool part, right? When you stop ignoring that and you start asking those questions, then you can pay attention to the numbers, but now you're building it off of a foundation of truth, right? So I am actually going back into paying attention to numbers more than ever, right? Because I know exactly what I'm building, exactly what I'm for, where my clear value is, what I would do for free, I can look at YouTube retention times. Not because YouTube's algorithm is the master, because I want to get better at holding people's attention on subjects I care about, right? I can look at I did a post the other day, 28x my previous best, right? And it was a simple post, 7-second video with the majority of it in the caption, right? I literally did the exact same model of a post 2 days later, and that video was one of my worst ever. But the beautiful thing about it is I have conviction in what I said for both, right? So now, because I know I would say it, whether again, 1 view, 1 million views, anywhere in between, because I feel it needs to be said because of my conviction, I can go back to the underperforming post and say, yeah, I want to say this, but maybe I'll change the hook so I can say it better. Or maybe instead of doing a 7-second video with a caption again, maybe I'll do it as a carousel, right? I believe it needs to be said. I can refine the message to get it better for people to receive it. But if I only focus on numbers, I'm going to be like, that post underperformed. I shouldn't say that. That is not what we're talking about here. We're saying, no, this needs to be said, but I can refine the way in which I say it. And that is a higher level of operation. So think of it this way. Could the number teach me about the quality of the hook? Yes. Could the number teach me whether the format is correct? Yes. Could the number dictate whether I need to say it or not? Fuck no. That is what conviction is. Conviction says, I need to say it. You're creating art. Art's function is to exist. You don't create art for commerce. You don't create art so you can make millions of dollars. You create art because something doesn't exist that needs to. And then you let the market take it from there. So if there's one value with going back to the numbers, is numbers can inform expression in how you do it. They do not get to dictate what needs to be said. That comes from here. You either believe it or you don't. Like I said, I'm not telling you to ignore numbers for 14 months or even 14 days, right? If your business is failing, not looking at the numbers and not living in reality it's not freeing, it's avoidance, right? That's like saying, if I don't look at the credit card bill, it doesn't exist. That is not what we're talking about here. That's incredibly childish thinking. But I do want you to imagine something, right? Say 12 months from now, everything doubles. Your revenue doubles. Your staff doubles. Client list doubles. Hours double. Does that also double the life you want? Does that double your time with your family? Does that double time where you get to be in flow and be creative? Does that double your ability to get into rooms you want to get into? That's what we're talking about. The idea of growing a business is to make the numbers go up, but the numbers on their own are not a good enough reason to grow it. That is why some of my clients who came in thinking they wanted to scale, when we funneled it through what they actually cared about, one client I'm thinking of in particular, her core value is family. And she had a business that was taking her nights, taking her holidays, taking her weekends. She wanted to scale, but the current version she had was going to scale more misery if we did that. Where we funnel it through her family, what she did was she actually lowered. She still hasn't signed a client to this day. She makes more profit than ever. She lowered the expenses. She lowered the amount of hours it took to do it. She hasn't worked Thanksgiving or Christmas or any of that sort of stuff that she used to in the last couple of years. And why? Because she funneled it through, what do the numbers mean to me? And for her, it didn't mean let's grow them to the moon. It meant let's use them better to more align with the life I want to live. Pretty simple. I'm not saying don't grow. Absolutely grow. But there is no value in you growing something that you wouldn't like want to do for free, or that you have full conviction in, or that the thing that you can't shut up about, right? Or at least whatever you're building right now to serve the thing that you can't shut up about. Know your numbers. Track them. Be in reality. Desire to grow them. Totally. But if you make the graph going up and to the right, if you make the numbers going up and to the right, if you make the tree impressive, but when it comes time to taste the fruit, it tastes off, that is just accelerating a life you don't want. If you do not know the life attached to growing those numbers, or don't want the life attached to growing those numbers, then the numbers are not the most important metric to you. They can prove that something's working. They cannot dictate whether the thing that works is the thing you want or need or deserve. So here's the deal. Growth of any kind, whether it's it's numbers, conviction, all that sort of stuff, it's uncomfortable as hell. If you somehow stayed in this video, got that level of discomfort, I've got another video for you. It is called Stop Winning a Life You Don't Want. We'll link it here. I would give that a watch, right? If there's something that resonates with the numbers, that's the natural next step. Otherwise, you giving me your time, I greatly appreciate it. You can't get that back. And so I hope you determine it's been well spent here. And I don't know when I'll be publishing the next one, but there will be a next one. And we'll see you there.